Today I'm sharing with you all of my secrets for preventing shrinkage and how I go from this to this. This video is not sponsored. Shrinkage isn't something that I particularly dislike or something that I actively try not to do, but I get a lot of requests, and by that I mean 4 people have asked how I prevent shrinkage. Now, my tips work best for me, of course, because I know my hair the best, but a lot of these tips I think can apply to a lot of different people. Tip number 1, this is my number 1 tip, my number 1 hair tip, my number 1 life tip. Well, maybe not my number 1 life tip. Finger coiling! And if you've been watching my videos for a long time, I bet you saw that one coming. So finger coiling is how I style my hair every single week, and I love it. And to this day, I still cannot find a styling method that matches finger coiling that gets me those same results. If you haven't already seen my curly hair routine and you don't know anything about finger coiling, you can click up here or up here. I don't remember which side it is. I'm gonna say this side. There are so many benefits to finger coiling, but one of them, if this is something that you're trying to avoid, is that it helps you to avoid shrinkage. So what it does is it helps to get your curls to clump together, and it actually also helps your curls to regain a little bit of length. And I find, depending on the products that you use, your finger coils tend to stay at the same length when they're wet compared to when they're dry. Finger coiling is also really great for hair growth. If you want to know more about that, you can click up here. After you finger coil, do not scrunch if you do not have to. I find that I don't need to scrunch because my hair tends to just recurl on its own. And scrunching does look really nice, but it does make you lose a lot of length, which is actually the next tip, tip number 2, and that is don't scrunch your hair when it's wet. I know that this is a super common curly hair practice. You've probably seen it a million times in so many different curly hair routines, people scrunching their hair upside down, making it curlier. Yes, it definitely makes your hair curlier. Yes, it definitely adds to curl definition. And yes, it looks beautiful, but you lose a lot of length. No matter what, do what's best for you. Which brings me to the next tip, which is very similar to avoiding scrunching, and that is don't diffuse your hair from the bottom. So this is something else that you've probably seen in curly hair routines a billion different times, is people diffusing their hair with a diffuser from the ends upward. This is very similar to a scrunching, isn't it has that shrinking effect. Especially if you hold your hair in one position for a very long time, you will lose a lot of length. Like you can see in the footage, I showed you what happens to my hair when I not only scrunch, but I diffuse from the bottom up. Using from the bottom up, like with scrunching, is a great way to get a lot of curl definition happening and a really great way to promote more curls if your hair tends to be kind of wavy. But if you're struggling with shrinkage, it does shrink your hair a lot. I'd say that this shrinks your hair even more than actually scrunching itself. So if you did scrunch and didn't do this step, you might be okay, but doing both of them together, you're definitely gonna have some shrinkage happening, because when you think about it, you're training your hair to scrunch up. You're making the strands shorter because you're applying pressure this way. The best thing that I found for this is actually a hooded dryer. I got one recently and I'm just obsessed with it. Not only does it dry my hair and not make it frizzy, it also doesn't create any kind of shrinkage. I can multitask and like edit videos, I can eat, I can drink water, I can play with my daughter, I can do anything with my hooded dryer. It's focusing on the roots, which is the part of your hair that tends to take longer to dry. So this is great at actually speeding up your drying time, and it's gonna help you avoid a lot of frizz, because when your hair is soaking wet and you start doing the scrunching motion, you're actually creating a lot of frizz. You're kind of disturbing all of the curls that were starting to clump together. They're going to start separating and you're gonna get more frizz. All you have to do is take your diffuser, instead of scrunching upward, just go hover around your head. This definitely works, but it is exhausting, particularly if your hair takes a long time to dry. My hair personally takes forever to dry, even with the help of hair dryers. So if you're like me, a hooded dryer is probably something that you're going to want to invest in. And tip number 5. This is something that you kind of have to figure out as you go and just be very aware, but there's certain products that can actually contribute to shrinkage. Now this might be different for different people, so you really just have to be aware and notice the differences. Pick and choose your products according to how you want your hair to turn out. For me personally, Shea Moisture makes my hair shrink up a lot. Now this can be great if your curls are loose and you want them to be tighter. But if you don't want your curls to be tighter, using hair products that encourage shrinkage can be kind of annoying. Hair products that I found that don't change my curl pattern in any single way and that keep my hair looking pretty much the same in terms of length when it's wet compared to when it's dry is, if you've been watching my channel, you know what I'm gonna say, Kinky Curly. Kinky Curly is great for keeping your length and not affecting your curl pattern at all. And if you want to see it in action, you of course can check out my curly hair routine. Tip number 6. This is for those of you that have a lot of trouble with shrinkage or just want as much length as possible. But mind you, be careful with this tip because it really does stretch your curls. And once your curls are stretched, they typically don't go back unless of course you re-wet and restyle them. That is stretching your curls. So typically over the week, I find that my curls tend to get more and more stretched as the days pass. And I think this is mostly because when your hair is up in a pineapple, it's pulling at your roots and kind of like straightening your hair at the roots a little bit, which is giving you more length. Oh, baby's crying. Where was I? So you can actually take advantage of this and make your hair do this purposefully to elongate your hair. One method of doing this, of course, that is a little bit more subtle, like I just talked about, is the pineapple and just putting your hair on top of your head like this and just letting it stretch that way. Another method that is a little bit more intense, and this is the one that you have to be careful with because if you leave your hair in this style too long, it really will stretch your curls out. I personally don't like to do it on my own hair for too long because it almost completely disintegrates my curls and I'm left with kind of almost straightish pieces. So use this tip cautiously. So pretty much what you do is you just take your hair at the back and you just twist it like this. Really, probably even tighter than this. And then you just take a clamp or a clip and you clip it at the top of your hair. And the reason why it stretches out your curls a lot is because your hair is twisted like this, which every twist is actually helping to stretch out your curls more and more. If you do this overnight, your curls will be very elongated the next day, but be mindful that maybe you won't necessarily like the look of this. I think the best areas to stretch are the areas that you can't really see. Anything below the ears I think is fine, but once you start stretching like these pieces here, like all like the outside of your head where all your beautiful curls are, that's when it starts to not look as nice. So if you are gonna stretch, I recommend stretching from down here. So like I said, that is not something that I tend to do regularly because it's a little bit too much for me and I don't really need that much stretching. Combination of my styling practices like I talked about in this video and the hair products that I use. With some experimentation, you may find that you don't need to stretch your curls, but definitely an option if your curls are particularly shrunken and you need to elongate them quickly in a pinch. The length of time that you need to keep your hair up in that style to stretch your curls really depends on how tight your curls are. Obviously, the longer you leave it, the more stretched your curls will be. The less long you leave it, the less of an effect it will have. So really do have to experiment to see what works best for your curls. Tip number 7, be mindful of the styling tools that you use. There are some styling tools that can actually help to encourage shrinkage. Now, there's nothing wrong with these styling tools. In fact, the styling tool I'm going to talk about right now, I love it. And I actually made a video on it. If you haven't already seen that, you can head up over there. And that is a tool like the Denman brush. Now, the Denman brush can create a lot of shrinkage. Yes, it creates beautiful ringlets, but with these ringlets comes shrinkage. Now, the shrinkage isn't significant, but it is definitely there. You can always stretch your curls later. Tip number 8. Using a light gel can actually be really helpful in kind of locking in the length that you have when your hair is wet. Gel that I personally love is the Kinky Curling Custard. I love this gel. It is super light, doesn't cause buildup for me. It works incredibly well. The only thing is you have to be careful not to use too much because too much of it can make your hair kind of crispy. So if your hair does get kind of crunchy and crispy after using it, just separate your curls and kind of scrunch them apart. Number 9. So this is not something that I personally do, but I've seen it work very well for others, and that is when your hair is wet and drying, you can take duck clips at your roots and kind of stretch out your hair at the roots. This will give you a little bit more length and will also give you more volume. I personally don't do this because I don't have duck clips and I don't have patience for that. But if you have duck clips and you have patience and time, it is something that can definitely help elongate your hair and give you volume. It'll work even better if you have a hooded dryer, which I talked about earlier, so you can just put your clips in, sit under that, and then when you take them out, give your hair a shake, and look at that, you have volume and you have length. If you don't have a hooded dryer, you can just diffuse like we talked about before at the roots. Tip number 10. This is also not something that I do regularly. It's actually something that I used to do many years ago when I really wanted my hair to look as long as possible while it was growing out. That is a 2-strand twist. So pretty much all a 2-strand twist is, it's kind of like a braid, but it's with 2 strands of hair instead of 3. So you just take 2 pieces and you just wrap them around each other. And you do this when your hair is wet, and then once it's dry, you take it out and you can separate them, and this will give you probably the maximum length that you can possibly get. Like, this is like probably one step above finger coiling. Personally, I don't do the 2-strand twist just because I don't really want to change my curl pattern, but it is an excellent protective style and a very effective way of preventing shrinkage and elongating your hair. Let us know in the comments below, do you have any tips for preventing shrinkage? I would love to know, share your wisdom with us. If you haven't already, you can subscribe to join the family. I love you so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.